we have got a special insight into the Liverpool side of things regarding Cody Gakpo and potentially even Andy Robertson as well. We have got David Lynch, Liverpool journalist, joining us today. David, how are you, my friend?
Yeah, very good. It's absolutely roasting outside, so glad to be here. Glad to be out of it, to be honest.
Yeah, tell me about it. I mean, we don't have any aircon or anything like that in this studio, and it is just absolutely roasting.
So apologies if you see us sweating buckets over here.
Yeah, the white shirts are no good for that, are they?
I was actually up in Southport, obviously very close to Liverpool, last weekend, and the breeze that you get there is just like nothing that you get in London. It was fantastic. So,
yeah, that's where you want to be. You want to be by the sea when it's this kind of weather, that's for sure.
These are the real insights we're looking for.
Exactly. Yeah. We could just talk about weather for the next but look, obviously Spurs and Liverpool doing a bit of business or potential business with each other this summer. Andy Robertson through the door on a free transfer already. Cody Gakpo is a name that has been mentioned quite a bit. What do we need to do to get this deal done, David? Come on, tell us.
Well, I mean, if you were hoping I'd come on and say it was a done deal and kind of just a formality to get it done, then unfortunately I'm going to disappoint. But
get him off.
Yeah, sorry.
Is there another journalist we can get?
Yeah, what I can say is that, I think it's clear, isn't it? Tottenham really like the player. And I think from the Liverpool side, and I think this is the thing that you do want to know and want to hear, is that since the start of the window, I asked the question, a good few months ago, and I reported this, was that, Cody Gakpo by no means in this window was considered untouchable, and that Liverpool would be willing to come to the table for him now. That's not to mean that they're kicking him out the door, they're going to give him away or anything like that, but he is a player who could be got for the right amount of money. But the key factors here is that Liverpool need replacements in. They already feel like they're short in attack, so they've got to add some forwards themselves before they feel comfortable. So I think it's one that's maybe going to rumble on a little bit longer. But I'd say I always think that a lot of the ingredients are there for this move to happen, which is that Tottenham want him. They're willing to pay a decent fee, which is probably going to be needed. Liverpool are willing sellers in the right conditions, which is that they get replacements. But we also know they're moving towards those replacements as well. So all the ingredients are there for this move to happen. Just might require a little bit of patience.
When it comes to those moves you're talking about Liverpool making, obviously there's links to Barcola and Mbaye from PSG, a potential double deal. Is there anything advancing with those deals? I'm guessing those could be the dominoes that fall for Gakpo to come to Tottenham.
Yeah, so with Barcola, I wonder whether to kind of take that out as a separate case in that, they definitely want Barcola regardless, because obviously they're a Mo Salah down. He's been so important for them for such a long time that, Bradley Barcola, they absolutely need to get him in as a minimum, and talks are ongoing there. So that's helpful in terms of moving that along. Now PSG have got the Super Cup out of the way. They've got a couple of deals over the line themselves. I think that's going to start moving. But I think the key thing with Gakpo is not necessarily that they just get Barcola. I think they want one more as well, or I know they want one more. That's as I understand it. On top of that, to maybe consider a Gakpo sale. But as you say, the links are out there now. With Mbaye, maybe Tottenham fans don't necessarily have to track that move specifically, because as I understand it, he's just one of many names that are on the list. But I think what you should be looking at from a Tottenham perspective is that Liverpool do get forwards multiple, or they get to the point of getting multiple over the line. And they're not a million miles away with Barcola. Those talks are ongoing. The other player, maybe it's Mbaye, maybe some other name comes into the list kind of late in the day. But I think that's what Tottenham fans need to be looking for, is that Liverpool can get two forwards. And if they are able to do that, or at least get close, it becomes a lot easier to get Gakpo out of Liverpool.
And in terms of a price point that's being banded around for Gakpo, obviously I think there's been some conflicting reports in terms of a price for him. Is it going to be around the £70 million mark, or do you reckon even further away from that, even north of 70 million?
I'd be surprised if it's north of 70 million. I mean, in this current market, Liverpool have every right, I think, when you look at some of the prices players are going for, to ask for big sums, because, he scored a lot of goals over a lot of years for Liverpool. He's a Premier League winner, and he was brilliant in that season. He didn't have a great season last season, but I think that's pretty much true of every player, bar Szoboszlai, to be honest. So I think they're definitely entitled to at least aim for 70 million. And as I understand it, that's the kind of realistic aim. I don't think they're going to get that. I wouldn't be shocked at all if it was something between 60 and 70 that kind of got the deal done. I think it's going to be around that. But that's the kind of figures. But I honestly, I really, some Liverpool fans maybe a little bit down on Gakpo, but I think it'll be worth that for a team that's going to use him every week. Has got a really good idea about how they want to use him. Can give him that bigger role that he maybe wants. I think he's worth the money as a kind of Premier League proven, peak-aged goal scorer. Got all the physical traits you need as well. Very rarely injured. I think he's kind of worth that. It does sound a little bit pricey, but I do genuinely believe Liverpool are right to ask that, and I think Tottenham won't go too far wrong for paying it.
Has there been any indication internally, with Iraola now coming in, what his thoughts are about Cody Gakpo? Because as you say, Liverpool need to bring in two to replace him. But how incentivized is Iraola in pushing for a second winger? Or does he like Gakpo? Would he want him to be part of the team next season?
Yeah, with Gakpo, I can see how it would work with the new manager in terms of he's kind of playing this almost a front two and a 4-4-2 really, which kind of suits a lot of Gakpo's qualities. I mean, he is good off the left, but you get him into more central positions, and the way he strikes the ball, he seems a good fit. So he's only played the one friendly because he was back late, but he looked pretty sharp and pretty good in that one. So you could see how he could make it work, but it's a combination of factors at Liverpool in that they always try to be good sellers as well, and kind of see where there's an opportunity to make money on a player who, he could fit this style, but they maybe think someone else can fit better. They may be looking for someone a little bit younger. And it'd be also a big profit on a player they didn't pay huge sums for. So, and then you throw in on top of that Gakpo himself seems to be open to the idea of a move to have a bigger role elsewhere, because he was very much second choice last season. Oh, well, he was more first choice last season, but second choice the season before. We'll probably go back to that this season. You can see why it kind of appeals to him. You can see why it appeals to Liverpool. So it's not necessarily that Iraola thinks, this guy's no good for me, but I think it's more a case of, Liverpool can see the sense, the club as a whole, it makes sense for them and for the player as well. So you combine all those factors, it just adds up to him being a player who is on the market effectively.
Yeah, so Spurs obviously looking to regenerate the forward line as a whole, to bring in a number 9 as well. And from what I read in the reports, Spurs fancy Gakpo because of his versatility. He can play left, he can play up front. But from some of the Liverpool fans that I've spoken to, they don't really fancy him in the number 9 role. So from your opinion, how has he taken to that role when he has played in the number 9?
Yeah, so it's interesting really, because when he first came to the club, he kind of took that number 9 role on for his first. He signed in the January, and to the end of that season, he held that role, and I thought did a pretty good job there. Kind of, it's not quite Firmino level, because obviously he's probably one of the best false nines we've seen, but I think he was very good at linking the play, gets shots off brilliantly. He's got a big frame. I think the criticisms of him since when he's played that number 9 role is that he probably hasn't used his physicality well enough, and I think that's one criticism of him as a whole. Really, is that he's 6'4", he's absolutely massive, but he probably doesn't shield the ball as well as he could, maybe get involved in physical duels as well as he could. But I wonder whether that's just sometimes a coaching thing, and whether you get him with someone like De Zerbi, they could get that little bit extra out of him in that sort of terms of his individual play. Be very interested to see how he does in terms of that. But I think that's the main reason people haven't fancied him as a 9. But he's played some good games there for Liverpool. He's capable of doing it. But I would say maybe that left side is more his natural role. But I'm really interested to see how Tottenham use him if they get him, because I think he's capable of both in the right system.
Yeah, when you look at his time at Liverpool, he's been pretty like a consistent source of goals and assists throughout his career, during his appearances. But last season, I definitely noticed there was a lot of ire from Liverpool fans towards Cody Gakpo for whatever reason. Obviously, Liverpool had their own struggles regardless of Gakpo, but he seemed to be, I don't know if he was scapegoated or he came under a lot of criticism last season, Cody Gakpo. Why do you think that was for you?
I think his role just became bigger, so you were seeing a lot more of him on the pitch, which, again, I think he's a very, very good player. But I think with the aims Liverpool tend to have in a season, he may be at that level to be starting maybe 50 games in a season and be a Van Dijk type, or, a Salah or a Mane, as Liverpool have had down the years. He's possibly not quite of that level. So you do see weaknesses when you see more of him. And you had to see more of him because N'Gamoa wasn't ready. Diaz had been sold. So I think that's where a lot of frustrations came from. But again, I go back to the idea that I can't really think of, outside of Szoboszlai, a single Liverpool player who had a good season last year in terms of consistency. So He's not alone in that. And then you think back to what he did in the title-winning season and how important he was there in that rotation with Diaz. Scored a lot of important goals, scored a lot of goals in general, and has consistently scored goals for Liverpool. And there's a very good player there. So I think he probably unfairly singled out at times last season. I think Liverpool had an awful lot of problems, and they weren't a well set up team either. So he shouldn't take the brunt of the criticism in the way he has. And I think I don't think last season is anything for Tottenham fans to look at and be too worried about, because I think in the whole, his Liverpool career has been very good. And as you say, finding consistent sources of goals at Premier League level is not easy at all. And he is definitely that.
Yeah, and when it comes to Cody Gakpo, sorry, I had a question in my mind. I've gone completely blank. Apologies.
Well, the question that everyone wants to know the answer to: how likely is this deal to happen?
Yeah, like I say, I think the conditions are there. I think you can see how this comes together. Liverpool are progressing on Barcola. They've got their eyes on another attacker, be that Mbaye or another. And you would fancy them to get two deals over the line in forward areas between now and the end of the window. So I think the conditions are there for them to be able to sell. I think Cody Gakpo, I don't personally know this, but that's the talk from around him, is that he's open to the move as well. And Tottenham 100% are willing buyers. So, add that all up. I would say there's a strong likelihood that he does end up, but you've just got to it's probably going to push till late in the day. That's partly probably Tottenham driving a bargain. Obviously, Liverpool also got to get their ducks in a row. So it's one of those, might be a nail biter towards the end of the window. But I do, you can never guarantee anything in the transfer market. But I do lean towards this one happening.
I remember I was going to ask, in your opinion, in your personal opinion, you've spoken highly of Gakpo. Do you think Liverpool should be selling him, or do you think it is the right time to move on, or do you think he should be kept?
I wouldn't be against Liverpool keeping him for the sake of continuity, and as I say, having someone who can score goals if you put him in a system that works for him, and I think Areola is capable of that. And I think there's been so much change at Liverpool that keeping someone who's been around and knows the place is always handy. But as I say, Liverpool, they always look to make the sale at the right times. And there's been a lot of players where they've maybe missed out on the opportunity to do that, or felt that they could have done better in doing that previously, and have received criticism from fans for not selling at the right time and maybe running to the end of a contract. They've done it with Diaz and got criticised for that in the end, and then they're probably looking to do it with Gakpo now. But I think they've just got to find the balance of, sometimes it's smart to let someone run to the end of the contract, and sometimes it's smart to make the sale. And if Tottenham are putting, it is still huge sums on the table for a player who, is coming up to his peak now, but you could probably get in someone younger who, you're looking at someone like Barker, who will possibly be a step up on him. If you can do those deals in tandem, then it does make sense from Liverpool. So I can see the business case for it. From a football perspective, I can also see the downside. So tough one to answer, really. I certainly wouldn't be against him staying, but I can see why they would make the sale now.
And another player who obviously has gone from Liverpool to Spurs is Andy Robertson. You can't see it behind his head, but he's got an Andy Robertson shirt hung up there. Obviously, Liverpool fans hold him in very high regard for the years of service that he's been there, and one of the best left backs in the Premier League of all time. It's got to be said. He's definitely up there. Do you think it was the right time for him to leave Liverpool?
Yeah, I think so. I think you could see last season, obviously, they brought in COYS to be kind of the new Andy Robertson, I guess, coming at a kind of younger age to hopefully hold down that flank for a good few years now. I think it was smart to keep him around for one more season just to kind of smooth that transition. But he knew the writing was on the wall now in terms of the game time there and the direction Liverpool wanted to move in. So, I think it was just the right move for everyone, really, because I think Tottenham fans will accept this. It's not the Andy Robertson of old, but I still also think alongside that, while that makes sense for Liverpool to let him go, there's also real value in him still in terms of, and he showed this for Liverpool still last season. He played quite a lot of games in the end and was still, I thought, played at a high level in most of them. So, to come into a dressing room like Tottenham that needs that leadership as well. I mean, you talked about Romero at the top there. To have him as one of the leaders in your dressing room in comparison to someone like Robertson, it's night and day.
Absolutely.
I really do think he'll have a positive impact. But it's not just minimising his impact to what he does off the field as well. There is still a good player there who can play a lot of games at Premier League level. So I think he'll prove a smart signing on and off the pitch, as I say. And just from a personal perspective, I mean, that shirt behind me, he gave me that. I used to work for Liverpool actually in their media department, and he gave me that signed shirt when I left the club, and dealt with him many times, and just an unbelievable guy, one of the most normal footballers you would ever come across. And as I say, I just think he's going to be, he's going to have a great influence for Tottenham and really kind of turn things around in that dressing room. But he's also capable in terms of what he does on the pitch as well. So a lot to like about the signing, I think.
It kind of is no doubt what he's going to bring you off the pitch is something that Spurs have been lacking for many years now. But, me and Sim have had debates over this. There's a big debate in the Spurs fan base who will actually start for Spurs at left back next season. You've got Destiny Udogie there. Spencer's obviously gone now. Do you think it will be Andy Robertson that's going to be starting week in? Obviously, you're not a Spurs fan and you don't watch us week in, week out maybe as closely as Liverpool, but judging on from what you saw from him last season, does he still have it in him to start week in, week out in the Premier League for a team pushing for the European spaces?
I would think so, just on the basis that, he started a lot of games for Liverpool side that wasn't the best season we've seen from Liverpool, but he finished fifth. I mean, if Tottenham were to finish fifth and you handed you that now, I think you'd be probably pretty pleased after the last couple of seasons. So, he might not be winning the Champions League level, which, albeit Liverpool are a million miles from that at the moment and are aspiring to it. But, for what Tottenham are aiming to, which is to get right back up into those kind of Champions League spots, be back in that part of the table, certainly think he's good enough. At his peak, he was one of the best left backs in Europe, and maybe he's lost a little yard of pace, but he's still got it in the brains, and he's still a smart player. He can still work around that, and the quality of his delivery is still there as well. So it might be a case of managing his games and kind of maybe splitting the role nicely between him and Udogie, because of he's a younger player, and that might work nicely really. And also Udogie can learn from him, by the way. So it might be a case of kind of splitting it a little bit. But I think if I was to pick who would start the most games, I think on the basis of what he'll do in training, I'd be surprised if Andy Robertson doesn't just edge that split, because he's a very, very good player, and he still is. So I think adding that experience and quality to Tottenham, I think he's capable of nailing down a starting spot.
David, absolute brilliant insight. I want to thank you so much for coming on and giving us that insight into Gakpo and Andy Robertson. I think you've probably made a few more Spurs fans a bit more excited maybe to get Cody Gakpo over the line. So hopefully it's a deal that can happen. But once again, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot, David.
So that was David Lynch, everyone, Liverpool journalist, giving us some brilliant insight into the Liverpool side of things regarding the Cody Gakpo deal. And from what he's saying, it sounds like it could happen.
Well, could happen. Obviously, the fact that Liverpool going hard for Barkley is one step, but he says we need two, as has been widely reported. But he thinks it's quite likely. That's his message. It's quite likely that Spurs do get Cody Gakpo, and he thinks he's a top player. He says, don't take too much notice of all the criticism he got last season. He is a really good player. He's been consistent for Liverpool. Look, I've always been very excited about Cody Gakpo. I think he's underrated by a lot of fans. I think a lot of people just put him in the average bracket. He's mid, he's this, he's that. But I think he'd be a top signing for us. I think he really adds quality to the forward line. He's somewhat a player that we kind of really need. So... I mean, I'm excited. Let's see if we can get this deal over the line. I mean, he says it's likely, so hopefully, but he says it's going to go down to the wire, which is not all we want to hear.
But look, big things are happening at Tottenham Hotspur right now.